Das ist ja auch, wenn ich zu Hause bin.
It's also when I'm at home.
Da ist Vater und Mutter, da sind die Kinder.
Father and mother, there the children are.
Aber es ist immer Platz für den Gottes.
Okay. So we greet you from our home shrine in McHenry, Illinois. McHenry is located between Milwaukee and Chicago. And we want to introduce ourselves briefly as we begin so you can know a little bit about us. This is our family. Last year on our annual Labor Day weekend family vacation, God blessed us with 2 children. Sarah, our oldest, who hasn't yet married, but is in a serious relationship with a good, kind man. And Stephen with his wife, Mary, who have our little James, Ellie, Liam, and Greta. And Mary is expecting a new little baby girl any day now. The kids all live in Milwaukee, and we used to try and see them every week. So, of course, like so many of us, the coronavirus sacrifices take on many different shapes and forms. We're here in our home shrine, which has the name Home in the Hands of Our Father.
Both Marge and my parents were drawn in different ways to the Monday evening talks with Father Kentenich in the 1950s and 60s. Here are a couple pictures of our families with Father Kentenich. I am in this one here, somewhere over this side, over here. I'm the oldest of 12 children, and Marge is in the middle of 7 children. The gift of the Monday evening talks made a world of difference in our lives. Who we are, who our siblings are, who each of our own families are today and have become. As you have heard in Mike and Grace's presentation, Father really stressed to the families that families come first. This was an extremely important message for our families, especially our fathers, who took this deeply into their hearts. Both our families at that time of meeting Father were struggling, with our fathers extremely busy outside the home after work and on weekends, mainly with apostolic work for the church, which was good in and of itself, but our mothers were on the edge of losing it. Father changed all that, and through his loving guidance helped our fathers see that their families were their first apostolate. Father guided our parents into the life of self-education through the love of and for our Blessed Mother. Looking back, we clearly see the change that took place in our homes and how they were transformed into what Father called the great atmosphere.
We'll share a few examples from our lives, both as children ourselves and with our own children, and now also our grandchildren, as to how this great atmosphere has affected our lives. We've experienced throughout the years that the first and most important element in the education of strong personalities within this great atmosphere is the life of the home shrine. With Father Kentenich's guidance, very quickly our parents understood and immersed themselves into the world of the covenant of love. And before long, they became some of the initial couples who took part in the birth of the home shrine in 1962 and 63. Through the covenant of love, lived day in and day out within the living and breathing walls of the home shrine, their lives, our lives, and the lives of future generations had been and are being formed and educated. We have so many examples we could share, and with our limited time, we will try to choose a few that may show the atmosphere created and its effects.
The formation experience there in the Monday evening talks came about as Father shared many foundational principles with the couples, such as the following. He said, a great atmosphere is evident when both the father and mother are at home. The absence of this atmosphere will allow the children as they grow older to go their own ways. This is often the case because the family atmosphere did not penetrate their hearts when they were young, unquote. Father Kentenich brought our fathers back to the home, both physically and spiritually. They became the foundation stones of the family, and together with our mothers, formed a unity that permeated this new home atmosphere that they began to create. After those initial difficult years, when Father came into their lives and began the transformation, we both remember our fathers being very present in our home life as we grew up. Little things are remembered in a big way. My father created movie nights in the Fenelons household, bringing home a big reel-to-reel 16-millimeter movie projector from his work and finding old movies at the library that I still remember to this day. Popcorn and candy were a part of the Friday night family experience, which we all kids enjoyed so much that we never felt the need to go elsewhere. I don't ever remember actually going to a movie theater. In fact, the neighborhood kids couldn't wait to be invited to our house for movie night.
Just one little thing of so many. I remember the great joy my father had decorating the Christmas tree every year, teaching me when I begged to help him how to patiently put the tinsel on the tree one strand at a time. Then the annual Lionel train setup and the hours of fun we would have together with it. We both remember coming home from school with the aroma of fresh baked cookies or bread filling our homes, and how welcoming that was. Years later, when we mentioned it, our mothers told us that they learned that from Father when he spoke of creating the atmosphere in the home to penetrate the hearts of the children and welcome them back home. And the atmosphere carries on. One little story of our oldest 8-year-old grandson, James, who loves to come down to visit Grandpa and Grandma, all the way from Milwaukee to McHenry, an hour-and-a-half journey. The very first time, a couple days by himself that he came to visit was when he was just 2.5 years old. And then several times a year after that, ever since. Eventually also with his brother and sister. He would love special alone time too. So one time a few years ago, when he was 5, he came by himself to visit us for a couple days. I had picked him up and Grandpa was waiting for us at home. When we pulled into the driveway, James saw Grandpa in the kitchen window and he waved at him. And Grandpa started to head out to greet us. Suddenly, James said with a deep sigh, "Oh, it's so good to be home again." This atmosphere of home has penetrated his little heart.
Through this atmosphere, Father's desire was to create holy families, holy family members. He said to the couples, "The mother thrice admirable wants couples to grow closer and closer to God, together as couples. A saint is the most original person. A saint is an original person, most natural at home in both the natural and the supernatural world. Become everyday saints." The atmosphere created by father and mother together is very important. The life of the little child is like a wax tablet. Every impression goes directly to the child's heart. As we said earlier, I'm the oldest of 12 children. When my father was 47 years old, a little over 1 year before he died, he had just had open heart surgery and was connected to many tubes, cables, monitors in his hospital bed. One of the Schoenstatt fathers came to visit him there. My father asked him, "Have you ever seen the heart of the Blessed Mother?" The priest looked at him a bit questioningly. I would almost think maybe he thought he had a little too much of the painkiller. My father pointed to the monitor above his bed and showed the exact beating of his heart with the little blue line going up and down. And he said, "There is the heart of the Blessed Mother." So real had his exchange of heart become in the covenant of love that he had made with the Blessed Mother and been educated and formed by her, that it was no longer his own heart, but that of the Blessed Mother. A year later, at his funeral, we were all standing together at the graveside, and someone observed my three youngest brothers, who were 6, 8, and 9 at the time, having a discussion at the side by themselves. They were overheard discussing whom their father was talking to at that moment in heaven. One thought he was talking to Gilbert Schimmel, that sister mentioned earlier. One thought he was talking to the Blessed Mother. And the last thought he was talking to Fr Kentenich. How is it that these three small children could talk about a spiritual reality that most adults don't even acknowledge or are aware of? We believe it was the everyday lived faith experience in our home shrine, within that great atmosphere. As Father had said, a saint is a most natural person, at home in both the natural and supernatural worlds. Every impression goes into the child's heart.
And the child continues to learn no matter how old. My parents' faithfulness, serving one another for 15 long years after my father's very serious stroke, was a witness to all of us, their children. Mike and I invited them to come to live with us after my father's stroke, but they insisted on living their life as they always had, by serving each other. At 75 years old, my father learned to write left-handed and to use a computer. My mother helped him see he could do much for himself. She knew that physically she could not handle helping him with his every little need. And my father took this to heart and learned to do as much for himself as possible with one hand. This probably gave them many extra years together. They could do this together because of the principles they had learned from Father and practiced throughout their years, helping one another become a saint. They died as they had lived in the atmosphere of their home shrine at 90 and 91 years of age, within 2 months of each other. During the Monday evening talks, Fr Kentenich also told the parents, "A great educator is a great lover who never leaves the one he loves alone. Share natural joys. Fathers in America are not respected. The father should be the image of the Heavenly Father. He should know everything pertaining to the child and to himself." End quote. Here I'd like to share just one little card, a homemade card that our son wrote and gave to Mike on his birthday one year. He wrote, "To a wonderful father, an inspiring role model, and a good friend. You have given so much and asked for so little. For this, I say thank you. You have and continue to set a wonderful example. I can only be thankful to call you my father. Your son, Stephen." And then one from our daughter, Sarah, for Father's Day one year. The card she chose said on the front, "You never told me how to be. You showed me." Inside she wrote, "You have shown me so much of what it means to lead by example, and quietly lived out love of family and love of God. And I couldn't be prouder of Stephen, who is following in your footsteps. I love you so much, kiddo."
Fr Kentenich said to the couples as he spoke on Monday evening one time, "Let your home be your kingdom, where the father rules as a kind but not ruthless king, and the mother rules as queen, the heart of the family. Learn that love rules. Love is attached to people, first and foremost to our family, to places, especially our home, and to things, realizing that all we receive comes from our loving Father. All things should be enveloped in an atmosphere of love. The home should be the center point from which all life flows. Behind all things, see the hand of God. Know the Blessed Mother is the guiding light, and that out of her shrine flow all the graces we need for life and for everyday sanctity." Unquote. The home shrine touches all life. We love the example we learned from another couple whose home shrine was similar to ours. Ours is a little bit high and a bit inaccessible for the grandchildren. So we made a little home shrine right next to ours. Let's see, I think you can see it right over here on the floor there. This is our little James when he was 3. He always loved to kneel by the little altar while we prayed our morning prayer and night prayer, and look at it and rearrange all the little things on the altar. He always would close the doors of the shrine picture at night before going to bed. Then in the morning, he would open it up again and we would say good morning to Mother Mary. When we added a little bell one day, James decided he would ring the bell when it was time to pray. Now James, Ellie, and Liam each have their own bell and we must begin looking for another couple as the other 2 children will start coming in the future. The home shrine is the birthplace of education and formation of the individual and the family. Slowly, organically, one by one, each spouse, each child, each grandchild is formed in the shelter of the home shrine atmosphere, taking it in, deep into their heart. It is these individuals who will be the great missionaries that are sent out into the neighborhood with friends, into the schools, into the workplaces, into the parish, influencing others one by one.
To illustrate this again, we'd like to share a little story of our son and what we feel is a beautiful example of this great atmosphere that is created in the home with the graces found in the home shrine. Together, after much discernment and prayer in our home shrine, we made the decision to homeschool our children. As so often is the case with the differences between girls and boys, our Sarah was always more communicative. We rarely had to guess about what was going on in her life. Our Stephen, on the other hand, was a much more private person who didn't readily share what was going on inside. We homeschooled both Sarah and Stephen all the way through high school years, and before we knew it, it was time for college. Both chose to begin their studies at the local community college. One of the first classes that Stephen had to take was a Sociology 101 class titled Marriage and Family. This was in 2001, 2002, and though things have escalated exponentially since then, confusion was already taking hold at this time. So as a mother, I was concerned about what this class's professor's views would be like. What would Stephen encounter, and how would he deal with it? Throughout the semester, I would ask Stephen now and then what his professor was like and what they were learning in class. He would deftly skirt around my questions and leave me wondering. This went on through the whole semester, and finally I stopped asking and just continued praying in our home shrine. I trusted that our mother would take perfect care as always. Finally, when Mother's Day came that May, Stephen gave me the best present he ever gave me. He handed me, with a little smile, a neat little pile of papers. His Mother's Day gift to me that year was all the papers he had written throughout the semester in his sociology class. The papers explained perfectly what this class was like, what all the topics were that they discussed, and what his professor was like. But more importantly, it showed in an absolutely clear way what sort of a person our son had become. Stephen said that, yes, they discussed all the modern issues in the class, from daycare problems to abortion and homosexuality, to the power struggles within the home, etc. Questions about really what does constitute family today. It was a joy to see how Stephen gave very sound answers to each of these topics in his papers. We'd like to share just a few sections from Stephen's final paper that semester. The subject given to the students by the professor was, in light of all the topics which they had discussed throughout the class, to write a paper about their own family experience and their impressions of their parents and family life, called a personal analysis paper. Stephen's response at age 18 will remain a treasure that I will always cherish, and it makes me ever grateful for the reality of the education and grace present in our home shrine.
The paper's title that Stephen gave it was A House United. And you'll notice all the way through this paper, all the terminology of the class and how they discuss family, it comes through. Society shapes us into who we become, he says. A family plays no small part in that process. I say process because it truly does occur over an entire lifetime. Although we are born with inherent qualities that can affect who we become, we are still formed in no small part to the influence of our family. As we have seen time and again in class, there are numerous variations to the definition of the word family. However, everyone goes through some version of family, and is shaped as a result. In my own experience, I can look back at my past and actually have pleasant memories, unlike so many others. There is one thing that I must make clear. I recognize how great an impact my family has made on me, and I don't deny it. Rather, I'm proud of it. The reason for this is that, in my eyes, the impact they have made has been positive. I believe that the most observable aspect of my family would be that our family structure. I find it humorous every time I hear someone scoff and say that the ideal family doesn't really exist anymore, when they say that this family only exists when watching Leave It to Beaver. However, who are these students of sociology to say that a certain family type can no longer exist? I would venture to give my family as proof that it can exist. Short of the lack of a dog, my dad's allergic to dogs, and that of a white picket fence, my family is a prime example. By the way, if my mom had her way, she'd have a white picket fence. I have looked for common factors in both my father and mother's families. What I found is what I believe sets us apart from your so-called average American broken family. First are the size of my parents' families. My father comes from a family of 12 brothers and sisters, and my mother from 7. You may ask what sets them apart other than just their size. My answer to this would be an excellent character of the 19 children. Not only are they close, but moreover, they're productive, economically stable individuals who are raising families of their own. The second factor is how tightly knit the two sides of the family are. For reasons that I shall address later, both my parents' sides of the family are close to each other, which makes for some of the best gatherings you could imagine. Rarely have I found a family that can mingle together so well and have such common goals. The third and final factor, in my opinion, is the most important. The factor is religion. I was astounded recently in class when we did an exercise where we listed what we would find most important in selecting a mate. Not one other person listed religion in their top 5 preferences. The reason that I was absolutely astounded was that because religion is one of the most important things in my and both of my parents' families. In many families, I know that religion is something on the side, but in ours, it is something that guides, shapes, draws us closer. These 3 factors make my extended family unique, setting up my own development. As for my own past, I was born into a white middle-class setting. Due to my father's adequate income, my mother could stay at home. I felt such, when I say my mother was able to stay home, I truly mean that she wanted to stay home. I feel such gratitude that my mother believed my sister and I were more valuable and important to her than earning some extra income to make life more comfortable. As for the housework that we focused so much time on in class, my mother had a unique way of dealing with it. Her method reverted back to family, characteristics of religion. She would take on every menial task and make it into something that was truly worthwhile and important, or a sacrifice, as she called it. No longer was the cleaning of dirty socks. Instead, she was doing something that was unpleasant and in the end had turned into something beneficial. The lessons that I have learned from this woman are countless. My parents shared a monogamous heterosexual relationship. However, who held the power in my family? That brings us to the power relationship between my parents. One would think that my father had all the power. Look at their relationship, you would see that they really did share power. I think the reason would be their profound respect for each other. Neither one was a sole decision maker. Rather, to the frustration of both my sister and I, they would delay judgment on any issue until they had time to discuss it. You could never use one's decision against the others because they were always of one mind. Some say that religion that my parents brought us up in could be considered a form of mental abuse. The reason for this being is it seemed that uninformed people to focus on making its followers feel guilty for many actions. I, however, don't see it that way. Religion taught me so many morals that are lacking in so many people's lives. A life without morals is an empty and ugly one to me. And in conclusion, he says, my family is one involving 2 white, upper middle class, monogamous, heterosexual partners for parents. Wow, that's a mouthful. Who maintain a traditional family structure with no abuse and a high level of love and respect. Would I trade it for a single parent family or a homosexual family? In a word, never. In my opinion, I received the best that there was to give. If it is true that a house divided can never stand, then I think my house is going to hold up pretty well.
And to the great credit of Stephen's professor, he wrote at the bottom of this paper, Stephen, excellent paper, in bold red ink and underlined and with an exclamation point. So this experience totally confirmed for us the power of grace and education lived in the great atmosphere of the home shrine. And now to conclude, we hear from our son Stephen's firstborn son, our little grandson James once again, who was visiting us last fall in our home with his younger brother and sister for a few days. He was 7 at the time. We're blessed that his parents, Stephen and Mary, are very faithfully bringing up their children in the beauty of our Catholic faith. They worked for a while with the Schoenstatt group, but have not yet come to construct their own home shrine. We know this is held in our mother's hands for the future. One evening during James, Ellie, and Liam's visit, we were all together here in our living room. And suddenly, James said to us out of the blue, "You are the people I know who love God the most." I said to him, a little surprised, "Really, James? But your mommy and daddy love God, and your grandpa and Nona love God." And James made a sweeping motion with his arm toward our home shrine and said, "Yes, but they don't have all this." And this spoke volumes to us, that from the little child's heart, he realized deep down that this home shrine, this place of grace, is filled with love for God and with God's love.
And so with our mother's help, we pray that we may continue to strive to perfect this great atmosphere in our home and truly become more and more deeply the people that love God the most. In this time of so much hopelessness, we pray that you have a renewed hope in the future, that all of the sacrifices you go through now as parents, our Heavenly Father and Blessed Mother, truly bring to fruit in ways we could never imagine and do on our own. Thank you, and God bless you.